Upstart connects capital to creative people who make a profit and make a difference. We wanted you to see what we see, which is this extraordinary talent and energy and potential.
This incredible variety and diversity of businesses, of types of people, of what they're focusing on, of styles, but they all share the same values.
Eat Offbeat. We're a team of refugees and immigrants from around the world with an unparalleled passion for the craft of cooking. We basically bring the best global home cooking from around the world to you.
When WINNE, it's a family name, and it's a consumer-focused private equity firm. And what we do is we partner with creative talent to invest in companies, help them grow, and enhance their positive impact in the world.
What is Level Forward? At our core, we are a creative company that believes that the power of storytelling can make our world a more just and equitable and sustainable place. And we do this by making commercial entertainment.
REC Philly, REC, acronym for Resources for Every Creator. We really exist for one reason only, and that's to empower creative people to do more of what we love to do. We've built this model, which has now turned into what we think of as a membership club and a talent agency.
I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Arternal. We build vertical software for galleries, auction houses, art advisory firms.
A venture capital fund to really redefine the next generation of diverse entrepreneurs and investors. We have a lot of women entrepreneurs who are creators at heart.
So Eline Media, we're a commercial social impact video game company.
Supply Chain Capital. We believe that culture and climate are the two defining forces of this time, and we're particularly interested in how they affect the future of food.
As the founder of Whetstone Media, a lot of what I talk about is the relationship between food and story. I have always looked to food and wine as a unique way of connecting with people from around the world.
We are building the new OS for Gen Z, starting with self-expression, creativity, and avatars. We're at this really interesting intersection of consumer internet, mental health, and creativity.
A fund called UTA.VC. So our focus areas today are the future of entertainment, the creator economy, and also accelerated technologies like Web3 and AI.
We're raising money now.
Raising $3 million.
$3.5 million.
We're raising $4 million.
We raised our first fund at the end of 2021.
We've closed 93% of a target $40 million inaugural fund.
And I'm also raising a $50 million fund.
So now we're raising a second vehicle of $60 million. Half of it is already subscribed.
Many of the entrepreneurs in the creative economy are women and are people of color and are queer. If we're seeking equity, investing in the creative economy is the same as investing in underestimated communities and people.
We think of food, fashion, media, art, creative spaces. Those are all powerful vehicles for organizing communities and essentially empowering those communities for the change they want to see.
Well, fantastic. So many great cameos and familiar faces in that excellent introduction to what we'll be talking about here today. Welcome, everyone that's joining us from the impact investing community, as well as various creative industries. I like to think of this as the cool crowd of the impact economy. My name is Dennis Price with ImpactAlpha, a news platform for impact investing and sustainable finance. I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this call today with Upstart Co-Lab. Today, we're discussing a topic near to all of our organizations, investing in an inclusive creative economy and digging more into Upstart's new inclusive creative economy strategy. Today, I'll be joined by Upstart's founding partner, Laura Callanan. Laura, welcome.
Thanks, Dennis.
Also joined by Ward Wolf, a director at Upstart.
Thanks, Dennis. Hello, everyone.
Hi there, Ward. And Deb Parsons, who's the managing director in business development and client engagement at ImpactAssets, not to be confused with ImpactAlpha. Welcome, Deb.
Thanks, everybody. Great to be here.
Before we jump in, just want to give a bit of context for the call. Only a few years ago, the so-called creative economy was an unrecognizable investment category to most impact investors. Investment deal flow was scattered. Creative entrepreneurs and enterprises, therefore, had few places to turn to for so-called aligned capital. That's changed in good part due to the work of Upstart, which has helped educate individual and institutional investors and connect them with deals across creative industries. This is sort of a trend we've seen in a number of categories in the impact space. Gender lens investing is a good example. I think of refugee investing as another one, where folks are able to put categories on the map. What we've seen as sort of successful across those cases are a few things. One, a champion, someone or a group of folks that just won't be stopped in putting that category on the impact investing map. Two, a definition and an identity of what's included and what's not in that category of investing, and in a way that I think broadens folks' perspective about the opportunity. And three, a mobilization and education of businesses, of new funds and emerging funds and vehicles, and ultimately a mobilization of capital, which is what we're going to speak about today. So today we're going to unpack how that process has played out within the creative economy, how Laura and Upstart Co-Lab have been just an absolute champion of this space and mobilizer. So let's jump in. Laura, can you join me up on stage?
Here I come, Dennis.
All right, welcome, Laura. So we've heard a bit about Upstart. Could you just introduce us to the organization and what you've been up to?
Absolutely. So we launched Upstart in 2016. We're a nonprofit. We're a sponsored project of Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. And we work at this intersection of impact investing and the creative economy. What really motivated us was seeing artists and designers and creative people launching for-profit social purpose businesses. Immediately before I launched Upstart, I was the senior deputy chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, your federal arts agency. And I saw that from coast to coast, artists and designers and other creative people were moving beyond the limitations of a nonprofit organization. And more, they were seeing business and the marketplace as the best way to scale and sustain their ideas. We think that creative people solve problems, and we want to give them the resources they need to be successful. So we connect capital with people who make a profit and make a difference in the creative economy.
We talked or mentioned briefly the idea of defining the category. And I think when most people think creative economy, they think art and culture. But you have a broader definition. Can you share that? And then, how big is that opportunity then?
Absolutely. It's been really interesting as we've done this work at Upstart and have engaged more and more with colleagues outside the United States, that the concept and the vocabulary around creative industries and the creative economy is very well known, very popular within the United Nations system, within the EU. Governments like the UK government have really prioritized the creative industries. And the reason that others do that is because they see it as an engine for economic development and for jobs growth. For some reason in the United States, because of the generosity of philanthropists and the strength of the nonprofit arts sector, folks seem to believe that arts and culture is only a nonprofit, and they kind of forget that we have so much going on in terms of the creative industries of the United States. But for Upstart, trying to make sense of art and design and culture and heritage and creativity to impact investors, we thought we needed to be able to use terms and taxonomies that investors already know and love. So we looked at how states and regions around the country define their local creative economy for the purposes of planning for the future of their region. And we used the taxonomy of the North American Industrial Classification Standards, the NAICS codes, because we know that a lot of investors and business leaders think in those terms. Coast to coast, there are 145 industries that make up the American creative economy. And it's often a reflection of the culture and heritage of a particular place. So for example, the state of Michigan does not include food in its definition of the creative economy, but the state of Louisiana does, for all the reasons we can imagine around Creole cooking and New Orleans and beignets and all that great stuff. So at Upstart, since we were seeking a national definition, we included industries that all states and regions counted, and we brought them together, and that resulted in about 145 of these creative industries. So that's a big number, too many to carry walking around in your head, and we bucketed these 145 specific industries into the categories that you see here. We began with an emphasis on fashion, food, and social impact media, with an emphasis on film and TV and video games, because even 8 years ago, we were seeing some nascent interest from impact investors in these categories. So we wanted to lean into where the energy and the early momentum already seemed to be. And we frankly just took the other industries out of these 145, we put them into the other bucket. I'll say on the topic of food, obviously, it's a topic that a lot of impact investors think about. For us, I think we look at it a bit differently. We appreciate the emphasis on human and planetary health and wellness that many impact investors take when they think about sustainable food. For us, we're thinking about food as a way to share culture and tradition and a way to bring community together. So it serves a little bit of a different purpose. We think about it in a bit of a different way at Upstart. I will say over time, we have been unpacking what makes up this other creative business category. We've done scans on arts and education, the visual art market, immersive experiences, the performing arts, and we launched earlier this year a deep dive research report on the $104 billion global creator economy and the opportunity we think that represents for values-aligned investors to get in the game of this newly growing, still being shaped category. So these first four areas, fashion, food, media, and other creative businesses, all around enterprise, investing in business as an asset class. The fifth category, creative places, is really thinking about real estate as an asset class and the role it plays in the creative economy, those spaces where creative work happens and where creative experiences are shared. Early on, and Dennis, you've been with us from the beginning, so you remember that we did some pilots with Calvert and with Lisk in New York City in the early years of Upstart. Both of those were vehicles that focused on real estate, affordable artist housing, or affordable shared workspace for creative economy businesses and space for arts nonprofit organizations. That was a great way to start with hard assets behind the opportunity. Going forward with the strategy we're going to talk about today, Upstart will be bringing forward opportunities to invest in businesses only, not in real estate. But when we look at the whole landscape, obviously real estate is part of that.
The creator economy report you put out earlier this year or last year was an interesting case because it's a category that sort of caught on in broader venture markets. Yeah. But what you guys honed in on is where impact investors can have an impact in shaping that market. And so I wonder if you can just share how you think about impact in creative economies that these types of investors might be interested in.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll bring our colleague Ward Wolf into this part of the conversation, since he led the conversation on he led the research on the creator economy. But the idea we had there was it's a new space. To your point, we've got venture investors who are validating the creator economy as a place to make money. We've got folks like Andreessen Horowitz and Tiger Global and Union Square Ventures all investing in the space. And it holds the promise of enabling a creative middle class in the United States. But when you dig into who's currently benefiting on the platforms, on these creator economy platforms, and for those who may be less familiar with the definition of the creator economy, we're talking about the tools, services, and platforms that let creative people make content, build their audiences, monetize their ideas, and control their own careers without being subject to the prejudices or preconceptions of gatekeepers like movie studios and book publishers and music record labels. So the idea is this should be an open platform for creative people to have a sustainable life and earn the income that they need. But right now, if you see who's actually on the platform, it's a very limited set of folks who are actually making a living. And the folks who are most successful on these platforms don't represent the diversity in America. Just in terms of who's in our population as a country, all of those voices and stories and perspectives are not being shared on these platforms yet today.
And we talked a bit about the effort Upstart has undertaken in mobilizing and educating investors. The new strategy, the inclusive creative economy strategy, why now for that, and what are you aiming to achieve?
Well, as your introduction nicely summarized, there's a lot happening in the impact investing space. There are a lot of new themes and topics, new vehicles that are coming forward. It's getting to be a much more developed space than when I joined the early impact investing conversations in the late 90s when I was on staff at the Rockefeller Foundation. And so there'll come a point where people, I think, might come to believe that if a topic or an issue has not yet been explored within impact investing, then it doesn't belong there. You know, we're coming to 15 years since the Bellagio conference where impact investing got its name, and a lot of work that Anthony Bug-Levine and others led at the Rockefeller Foundation to help to broaden the ecosystem of impact investing. And I'd hate for people to think that because the creative economy is not a forward topic among impact investors today, that it doesn't belong in the conversation. When I was at the Rockefeller Foundation, in partnership with my colleague Joan Shikagawa, who led our arts program at that time, we championed and closed 2 impact investments in the creative economy in about 2002, 2003, on the ground floor of this whole movement. And so I know it can be done because we've done it. And the work that Upstart's undertaken over the last 8 years, I think, has brought to life those examples of how it's happening, even if it's not named and framed as the creative economy. But I'm nervous that if we don't make solid progress on advancing this topic now and bring a vehicle to market that allows people to go from thinking it's a cool idea to actually putting their money where their mouth is, that the window may close to be able to bring values aligned capital to the 5% of the American economy that's in these creative industries.
And so specifically on the strategy, can you sort of lay out how much you're raising, how much you've raised, sort of the strategy within the structure?
Absolutely. So what we think that the field needs at this moment is a portfolio approach to investing in the creative economy, a portfolio approach that can invest both in funds that have meaningful exposure to the creative industries, as well as make direct investments into seed and early stage companies in the creative industries. There are already funds elsewhere in the world that are 100% focused on impact and 100% focused on the creative industries. They're in the UK, they're in Europe. A lot of the bilateral and multilaterals are using funds that are fully focused on the creative industries to promote sustainable development and economic opportunity in Latin America and in Africa. But for some reason, we don't have one of these vehicles in the United States yet. So this will be the very first of its kind. And we think that this this multi-pronged approach, where 75% of the capital we raise will be invested into funds led by BIPOC and women fund managers, prioritizing diverse entrepreneurs, and 25% of the capital will be deployed into seed and early stage companies in the creative industries. We think that this is the quickest way to bring the creative economy online in the impact investing conversation. Upstart is bringing this vehicle forward not just to demonstrate great returns and deep social impact for our investors. We know that someone's got to go first to feature the creative economy in the impact investing conversation. And we believe that by investing some of the capital with funds, that will demonstrate to wealth advisors whose clients are asking them for opportunities to invest in their impact investment portfolios in art and design and culture and heritage and creativity. The wealth advisors will see that there are certain funds out there that they could be bringing to their clients. We also think that by investing in companies, we'll be able to open the minds of some of our impact fund managers who will start to feature the creative industries as part of their investment strategy. We think that this portfolio approach can be really powerful and is core to the influence strategy that will be a big focus of our work over the next 10 years. Let me just pause on funds and why we've seen that some funds have a strong exposure to the creative industries. We did research in our second year where we looked at about 100 impact and sustainable funds to see if they, which funds, if any, already had some exposure to fashion and food and video games and TV and these other creative industries. And what emerged from that research, the funds that had the strongest exposure to the creative industries were also the funds that were doing the best on diversity. And we thought that was really interesting. These were the funds that were diverse-led or had a commitment to support BIPOC and women entrepreneurs. So we have sort of flipped that around and have been actively reviewing and engaging with BIPOC and women-led funds supporting diverse entrepreneurs. And while not all of them have a strong exposure to the creative industries, quite a few of them do. And we start to talk to them when we see that they have 20 or 25% exposure to the creative industries, helping them to see that while it might not have been an intentional part of their investment strategy to be in multiple creative industries, based on the entrepreneurs that they're backing, that's where their portfolio lands. And by engaging in that conversation with the fund managers, some of them are like, that's cool. We're not going to center it in our strategy. We're not going to do anything more with that. But a number of them have then revealed to us in the conversation that they themselves personally, while they're now managing these funds, have a creative background, right? They trained at Juilliard as a violinist before they went to Stanford to get their MBA. And so it then starts to make sense why some of these funds would in fact have strong creative industry exposure, even when their focus is diverse entrepreneurs. Let me pause there for a minute. There's a lot more we can say about the nature of the vehicle, but let me see what questions you may want to point me to.
If you could give a quick update on the amount you're raising and where you stand on that, and then we can move on and come back to the fuller discussion.
Absolutely. So we have $100 million of great opportunities that we want to bring capital to. We're currently working towards our first close, and the first close goal is $20 million of investment capital. We currently have more than $11 million of investment commitments. We're also raising general operating grants. I mentioned we're a nonprofit organization. We will not take a management fee. So it's going to be the grants that allow us to pay the team, keep the lights on, do the work. And we've got almost $3 million of general operating grants committed to the strategy to date. So we're working really hard to raise another $9 million of investment capital from foundations making program-related investments and mission-related investments, from donor-advised funds making recoverable grants. And we already have our first endowed cultural institution. The Toledo Museum of Art has already made a commitment of $1 million of their own capital, which is really exciting because, as you know, we've done a lot of work revealing that museums and art schools and performing arts centers and other cultural institutions in the U.S. are woefully behind their friends at the universities and the foundation when it comes to aligning their endowments with their values and mission. And by our count, there's more than $60 billion in the endowments of America's arts organizations. So we're hoping that this vehicle focused on creativity will be one way to welcome some of these art lovers and arts institutions into the conversation about impact investing.
Fantastic. Laura, stay with us. We'll come back to you in a bit. I want to bring up board. And also there's some great questions folks are asking, and some specifics to the fund, which are great. So keep populating those questions, and we'll come back to those towards the end of the call. But Ward,
Hi, Dennis.
bring this to life a little for us. You've amassed this pipeline. You've helped guide investments to some businesses and funds. What are the types of businesses and funds we're talking about here?
Sure. So yeah, thanks so much, Dennis. And you mentioned first sort of the universe of opportunities that we've been working with. We maintain a database of what is, around 300 impact investment opportunities in the creative economy, both companies and funds. It's really an evolving universe. It's been the basis for our advisory work, with foundations and families for the past few years, and it really reflects sort of our field building work and research since inception. And it's going to be the starting point for selections for the portfolio. Just to give a sense of sort of where we are right now, this provides a breakdown. By number, companies obviously represent more than 2/3, and funds are a little less than 1/3 in this universe. By amount of capital raised, perhaps intuitively, it's about the reverse. We have a relatively even split across our 5 main creative economy pillars that Laura mentioned earlier: ethical fashion, sustainable food, social impact media. The other category, which includes things like the visual arts platforms, the immersive experiences, and many other businesses in arts, culture, and heritage industries that drive social impact. Laura also mentioned our growing work and exposure within the creator economy, the digital tools and platforms used by creative people to monetize their work and reach new audiences. So that's a growing segment of our pipeline, currently at about 10%, but we expect that to be bigger. So in addition to this industry focus, we also pay really close attention to demographics, since it's a core pillar of our impact. Which we'll dive into more in a second. But more than half of the companies in our pipeline are led by women or people of color. More than 70% of funds are diverse led. And the other piece, not something we actively necessarily seek, but it's emerged as an interesting point, is more than 1/3 of all opportunities are led by artists and designers. So, these are practicing artists or formerly trained artists, maybe how they began their career or still part of their life, but it's really a result of our unique focus and approach. But it also, illustrates the kind of, problem-solving mindset and impact orientation that creative people bring to their enterprise.
What are some examples of creative companies or funds that have impact investors have already put money into through your work or elsewhere, or that are also in the pipelines? Some examples.
Absolutely. And you got a little bit of a preview for those who caught the opening video featuring some of the entrepreneurs and fund managers in our network. But I'll mention a couple just because I know there's a lot of info we want to pack in here. So on the company side, there's a company that we've gotten to know well over the past couple of years called REC. They're a creative incubator and agency all about empowering independent content creators to build sustainable and scalable businesses. Consists of a physical space and digital platform, all about providing resources, community, and job opportunities. Particular focus on closing the earnings gap for creators of color. Started in North Philadelphia in a warehouse in 2015. They're now in a state-of-the-art facility in the fashion district of downtown Philadelphia. They've got about 1,000 members in their space, access to all sorts of shared equipment like podcasts and music studios, visual and design labs, dance studios, editing stations, and its creative agency connects those members to opportunities with corporate clients. They just raised a successful round of funding, and they'll now be taking the model that they built in Philadelphia, bringing it to their next city, which is Miami, which is very exciting. So that's slated to open later this year. And I know they hope to sort of bring this model and replicate it and scale it to other cities nationwide. So this is a really interesting company from our perspective, one that is set up for financial success, but is really also leading with sort of their impact aims and keeping their mission close to the core, especially as they expand. On the fund side, one that I'll also mention is Supply Chain Capital. This is a women-led venture capital fund investing at the intersection of food, culture, and technology. Their sort of central thesis is, as the U.S. becomes increasingly multicultural, consumer tastes and preferences and preferred ingredients are expected to shift, and the international food aisle is will become the whole grocery store. So they're really planning on capturing this consumer shift by investing in culturally relevant brands, authentic ingredients and related technologies that support them. Just a couple, really quick examples from their portfolio would be an agua fresca brand called Agua Bonita, and also a media company called Whetstone, which is a multimedia company focused on global foodways and celebrating communities and their culinary traditions through engaging content, through media. Might recognize the founder as the host of the Netflix series High in the Hog. That just gives a flavor of the types of companies and funds that have been attractive to impact investors, and we think are very representative of what's possible in the creative economy.
And Ward, talk to us a bit how you source companies and screen them. And there's a question, I know we're going to get into questions in a bit, but you might be able to answer here is, like, there's place-based and local sourcing going on here too, and the ability of the fund to target that sort of investment. But yeah, sourcing,
yeah, absolutely. So from sourcing, we really try to leverage our network and expertise, sort of the role we've been playing building the market for impact investing in the creative economy over the years. So things we really look to from the sourcing perspective are, our network of impact investing leaders, our feeder network around the country of managers, business accelerators, and incubators. On the accelerator side, some are sort of like social enterprise focused, some are focused on creative industries, and we're always looking for the intersection of both. Of course, we do regular scans of deal tracking databases and impact investing news sites like ImpactAlpha, of course. A lot of inbound inquiries that result from public speaking, earned media, webinars like this. We're really proud to get the word out, and I know there are many entrepreneurs and fund managers that are perhaps on this webinar right now that we've been in close touch with over the last months or year. I know, hoping that we will be successful in launching the strategy so that we can support them. And lastly, I'll just mention we do periodic open calls to our full email list. We have a questionnaire that's hosted on our website, which is the first point of entry for many folks. And then that's sort of like the sourcing process. Our initial screen is pretty broad, but there's three initial criteria. Number one is creative industry alignment across the creative industries I outlined previously. Second is, around a clear, intentional, measurable, social impact within our 5 impact categories. And then it's a question of the investability, the same way any investor would for a, early stage, high growth product, service, or platform. But, the quick things we look at before moving into deeper review are the size of the market opportunity, team's qualifications, and the track record to date, existing partners, and things like that. I see we've just pulled up the slide that outlines the 5 pillars of the impact that we are seeking to achieve through this portfolio. I'll just quickly read through them, and more detail is also available on our website and through our 2022 impact report, where we demonstrate a framework for how we are assessing some of the investments that we have facilitated over the years. These are access to capital for BIPOC and women entrepreneurs, quality jobs in creative industries, vibrant communities anchored by creative places and businesses, sustainable lives for creative people, and an inclusive creative economy.
Ward, Laura mentioned earlier that in your research, you all have identified existing funds that have exposure to creative industries, which is super interesting, and I think something we often see in these types of strategies, such as gender lens, for example. Once it's defined, it turns out there's actually a lot more funds targeting those industries, if not intentionally. So what do you have some names of some or types of funds that you may not have think of as creative economy funds but have exposure?
That's a good question, Dennis. I'm not, as far as the ones that we've really, identified and worked with, I think, we have the bottom threshold of 25% exposure within the creative economy. Most of the funds that we ultimately end up working with or including our pipeline are probably around 50, 60% or higher. And so, I think part of our role as the lead creative economy investor within a fund is certainly to help help them recognize the opportunity, help other investors see what's possible. One fund that comes to mind is SoGal Ventures. They're focused on really focused on millennial and Gen Z consumers and the products that are appealing to them. They've had a massively successful fund one. They didn't necessarily have a strong creative economy focus when we first approached them, but when looking through their portfolio, we saw a lot of alignment, and we've been able to work with them closely over the last year plus, and really sort of help them spotlight the creative economy as a focus within their strategy, which we hope will open them and similar funds to impact investment in the future.
Thanks, Ward. Hang tight, and we'll be put you back in a minute. But I wanted to speak briefly with Deb Parsons, because what's unique here is of course the creative economy thesis and lens, but also the structure of this new investment strategy, and that's really come out of ImpactAssets. So Deb, can you share us a bit more about this multi-funder pooled strategy and what needs it fills?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everybody. Great discussion so far. And so, like Dennis said, I'm from ImpactAssets, and we're working with Laura. And I just want to pause here. She said something earlier that she works with creative people to solve problems. Laura is a creative person solving problems. I mean, essentially, she saw that capital wasn't moving to this creative economy. And so working with us and working with other funders, she's trying to figure out how to move that capital. So the multi-donor fund concept at ImpactAssets is a way that she's solving this problem. So just want to shout out for those of us who don't necessarily think of ourselves as creative when we're working with money. We got that. So a multi-donor fund comes in a lot of different flavors with us. In this case, Laura and the team at Upstart created a designated fund at ImpactAssets, and it might work well with the visual that we have, so we could talk about this. But essentially, we created this pooled account where donor dollars can be pooled, just like it's a multi-donor fund. So we're bringing various different kind of philanthropic dollars into a single account, and then we will help facilitate the underlying investments in that account. So you have philanthropic dollars in. Oftentimes those are from individuals who've received a tax advantage at that point. Donor dollars in. The Upstart team says, we would like you to now place those dollars into SoGal or any of the other pipeline portfolio companies and funds that they're considering. Our team, our investment team, will then execute on that deal and manage and custody those investments for the life of that investment. So we take care of all the back end of that investment. And this is a service that we do for a variety of different type of clients with really forward-thinking theses. Like, for example, the Sea Forward Ocean Fund, they're looking at a healthy ocean. We have the Community Impact Fund, which is a very hyper-local fund in Philly that's focused on Black entrepreneurs. basically these are creative people who are trying to solve problems that they see. And we do that all the time with our clients who come to us and say, I believe that there is a different way to do funding. And let me, just for context, just in case people don't know what a donor advised fund is. A donor advised fund is a philanthropic vehicle that is often used to make grants to great nonprofits that do great work. But a lot of times those funds are then just invested in standard mutual funds. And we believe that all those dollars should be used for impact. And this is a great example of impact. And if you get any, you probably have written about many pieces about this, Dennis, but there's over $250 billion in donor advised funds just sitting on the sidelines. So to a question in the Q&A, you know, why has there been so much success with Laura besides her and her team creating this great thesis, is that there's this philanthropic capital on the sideline ready to be deployed. So making the right instrument and the right pipeline, if you will, to get that going is what's unblocking that money. So very excited to be working with her on this, and certainly can ask or answer specific logistical questions, be it if you're an individual donor, a private foundation, a corporate foundation. If you have philanthropic dollars, we can make this investment work for you.
Yeah, that was helpful, hearing the different types of investors that are looking into this. Laura mentioned the Toledo Museum of Art, for example. So, like, how would an institution like that invest?
Well, there's a variety of different ways, specifically like the Museum of Arts. So they could either do a PRI, a program-related investment, or depending on their structure, because it will be defined based on that foundation and what their governance structure and their board allows. So we have designed it so we can take in program-related investments, recoverable grants, and we even work with what's called an agency fund model. And that's a pretty rare solution, but really what it highlights here as the team is identifying different investors into this fund, our team will partner with Laura to figure out the right solution. So we have identified the main ones that these various foundations and individual donors would take to get into this fund, and we have created the legal templates and facilitated the way to get that going. And you know, I just hats off to all the work that this team's been doing.
And then just to be clear, you know, creative economy is still being defined, and like you said, pushing the boundaries, pushing the edges of what investors are doing here. But the team's still looking at delivering, you know, quote unquote market returns or you know, for-profit businesses, and so then that money comes back into or back to the source, right, when it's returned.
Yeah, that's a good point that I should have highlighted when we were looking at that slide. Yeah, so when you invest out of your donor, when it's a donation, in the middle graphic there, you see the ImpactAssets logo. So what will happen is the funds will be invested out to the creative economy portfolio, which you see on the right of your screen. And when those companies and funds are successful in the returning capital, it will go back into ImpactAssets into the Upstart Co-Lab account. And then the return of capital will be returned via a donation back to the various investors. The investment will never go back so you can use it with your income dollars. It has to stay within the philanthropic space. And that's IRS guidelines. And I think what the beauty of this, though, is that it's actually creating an evergreen pool of assets to really create this engine of growth around these kind of organizations. So it's a pretty robust engine.
Thanks, Devin. Let's bring Laura and Ward back in, because one thing I understand about the structure is that it allows the team to move fairly quickly. And so I want to hear a bit more which is again a barrier to some of these, raising capital for these funds or companies. So Laura, Ward, how do you work together, and how does the structure enable you to move quickly and move capital quickly?
Well, what we appreciate about the partnership with ImpactAssets and this multi-donor pooled structure is that we don't need to set up a limited partnership or an LLC. This will not be structured the way a typical fund is structured. It allows foundations, donor-advised funds, and endowed cultural institutions to pool their assets together and define that they want their monies to be invested with Upstart's inclusive creative economy strategy. That allows us to be more flexible and nimble, while at the same time respecting all of the charitable compliance requirements and all the expectations that investors have that we will do a thorough and good job on the diligence at all stages of that process. It allows Upstart, as a nonprofit that's been exploring this space for the last 8 years, to put together a stellar investment committee. And I'll bring up some of their smiling faces so everyone can see the great folks who are going to be helping us make all the smart decisions here. But we'll be bringing all of the thoughtfulness and rigor that investors expect when money is being invested and not donated away. But it allows Upstart to bring our vision to investors, to these charitable investors, with the benefit of the excellent, robust operations and administration that ImpactAssets has been able to build over its history. So Deb can correct me if I get this wrong, but I feel like, having worked really hard to build an amazing machine that understands impact and understands investing, ImpactAssets has been looking for ways to fulfill its mission and be able to even mobilize more capital through that operation. And we get to be the lucky beneficiaries of that. We don't need to build those investment capabilities in terms of transaction management, custodial services, financial valuation, or all of the protections that go along with it. We can leverage the expertise of the friends at ImpactAssets to do that. And the Upstart team, with the great investment committee you see on this page, we're able to focus on the big idea. We're able to focus on the investment proposition the creative economy offers, and ensure that we're really delivering on our impact thesis.
A couple audience questions on sort of logistics before we move to some broader ones. But like for a foundation, for example, is there a minimum investment required? And then on geographies, are you investing beyond the U.S.? Is one geographical question outside of the U.S.? And then is an investor able to target an investment to a particular region? Let's say Denver, I think was the example here.
Right, I'll take them one at a time. So for foundations, the minimum investment is $1 million. Some foundations are doing this as a program-related investment. Some foundations don't use the PRI tool. So we have 3 or 4 already who are doing this as a mission-related investment, which is great. For donor-advised funds, if you have your donor-advised fund on the ImpactAssets platform, the minimum is $100,000. If you have your donor-advised fund on another DAF platform, the minimum is $250,000. And for example, the folks at CapShift have diligenced this offering, and they have recommended this as a recoverable grant for clients at Fidelity, and they have done the diligence on it, so it's available to other clients of CapShift. So that's the minimum question. Then you were asking about geography. So we are undertaking a national strategy, and we think that that's incredibly important, that we demonstrate that it's not just New York and Los Angeles where you can be focused on a creative economy strategy as an impact investor, that throughout the country, in rural and urban locations, the creative economy is generating economic opportunity and creating jobs. So it's a national strategy. We know that there are a lot of foundations and families that are very place-based in their philanthropy. And for those who would like to make $1 million investment into the national strategy, we have a way of working with them to support them doing additional impact investing into their local creative economy. We would welcome them as sort of honorary upstarters. We would support them in their diligence. We would help them look at their local opportunities in the context of the best of what we know to be true nationally, based on our our proprietary investment pipeline. So we're hoping that there will be some opportunities for us to do that, because it will give us eyes and ears on the ground in cities around the country where we don't have staff, and we might not be able to identify great opportunities the way a local leader could identify those opportunities. However, you asked about a more global perspective. For this strategy, Upstart is not going to be thinking beyond the United States. However, we have undertaken a big piece of work in terms of thought leadership with partners at Nesta in the UK and Fidenza and Compromiso in Argentina. If you go to the website creativityculturecapital.org, you can read 100 essays from all around the world that demonstrate how the creative economy delivers deep social and environmental impact, and how impact investors are discovering great opportunities and putting capital to work in the creative economy. And you can read essays from people like Yo-Yo Ma and Darren Walker and Sir Ronnie Cohen, who are all waving the flag of the creative economy in the impact investing conversation.
Laura, we talked a bit about expanding the definition of creative economy beyond arts and culture, but I'd imagine there's a role for nonprofit arts organizations to play here. And that's one of the questions here is how can a nonprofit art organization participate in any part of the strategy?
Absolutely. Well, if you are a nonprofit art organization with an endowment, you can follow the example of our friends at the Toledo Museum of Art and decide to invest some of your capital into this strategy. However, if you are an arts organization with a smaller endowment, which many arts organizations have smaller endowments, this might not feel like the right place for you to engage at this moment in your own financial journey. So we would just encourage you to be great impact investors and bring your values into your investment policy statement and bring your values into all of your investment decisions. So if you have a public equities portfolio, which you probably do if you've got any sorts of investments as a nonprofit cultural institution, be thoughtful about what that public equity strategy is and whether you are exposed to companies that are doing things that are contrary to your values. If you have money to invest, who's doing that investing for you? Have you made a commitment to be working with BIPOC and women fund managers and wealth advisors as the professionals who will help you make the best investment decisions for your organizations? That's a way to live values around diversity, equity, and inclusion in your investment portfolio, which doesn't even presume whether you will be making investments into socially responsible and impact strategies, or whether you'll just start with that commitment to DEI. And that's a great place to start. I see we've got some limited time left, Dennis, so I'm going to let you get on to another question if you feel like it.
Yeah, and I think you sort of addressed this, but it was subtle. And I think an interesting point is why both funds and businesses in the company, and why that percentage split.
Yeah, part of it is, as I tried to describe early on, we're trying to showcase the potential of the creative economy to people all across the impact investing ecosystem. We know that there are wealth advisors like our friends at Sonnen Capital and Veris Wealth Partners and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and places like that who have clients that are artists, they're art collectors, they're art lovers, and they're impact investors. And these folks are asking their wealth advisors for opportunities to align their investments with their love of art and culture. And for the most part, the answer they get back is, no, I'm sorry, there's no opportunity. Wouldn't you like to do more in community development? And we love community development, and we love gender lens investing and all of these other important themes. But we want to be sure that over time, that wealth advisors will see the funds that Upstart has deployed capital into and what a great job those funds are doing. These will be funds that have 50% or more exposure to creative industries because, as we described earlier, they're supporting BIPOC and women entrepreneurs. And we see that these entrepreneurs are succeeding in the creative economy, right? So by having funds in the portfolio, we provide a solution to our wealth advisor friends who currently cannot satisfy their clients' requests for opportunities and connected to arts and creativity. However, we want this to be the most exciting and engaging conversation about a new sector. And we know that there's nothing more exciting than hearing from an entrepreneur themselves about who they are, where they come from, why they started their company, and the impact that their company's having. And unless we were working with companies directly and working with some of these entrepreneurs directly, we'd be missing the opportunity to hear those great stories, and would be missing the opportunity to engage the imagination of our fund manager friends who are leading impact portfolios that care about all the things that the creative economy can deliver in terms of impact. Financial inclusion, quality jobs, community development solutions, just to name a few. So we want to be able to help fund managers recognize the potential of these companies in the creative industries, such that going forward, they start to intentionally center the creative industries as a priority in their own investment strategies, while continuing a commitment to diverse entrepreneurs and some of these other issue areas.
One last question, sort of a macro one, and Deb or Ward, feel free to answer. One is the impact of a potential economic downturn on the underlying companies, but also the Hollywood strike provides an interesting context too in the conversation around more equitable models. So how do you see this sort of macro environment impacting your strategy?
So Ward, do you want to say a little bit connected to the Hollywood reality?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I think one thing that we've been hearing from some of the entrepreneurs that we've been talking to and tracking is, you know, with the strike in Hollywood, you know, I think a lot of people are really looking at this as a time of disruption, where sort of old models are breaking and new things are emerging, and new paradigm is being set. And you know, one reason why we think it's really important that impact investors are here to support the entrepreneurs as they're, you know, starting these new companies and building the new creative enterprises that are really centering, you know, principles around diversity, representation, access, inclusion. It's really important that impact investors are there to support them at this stage. So these ideals are baked into the company early, so that as they grow, it can, you know, create the kind of creative ecosystem that we'd love to see. So I think that's sort of one way that we've been seeing this sort of macro environment, at least within the world of media, entertainment, and content and things like that. Just a really, really opportune time actually for impact investors to be paying attention.
Great, and we are approaching the end of the call. Any final words, Laura? Calls to action, Deb?
Absolutely. We're going to throw up a slide of how you can contact us to get more information about what Upstart's doing generally, and about the opportunity of the inclusive creative economy strategy in particular. Reach out. I'd love to talk to you. I know that Deb is standing by for folks who have a relationship at ImpactAssets already, or are encouraged by this call that they want to start to work with ImpactAssets going forward, and she'd love to support you on anything you'd like to do with Upstart's inclusive creative economy strategy and all the other important themes and topics that the ImpactAssets team supports. Deb, can I pass it to you for any final words?
I mean, you said that. It was very good. And additionally, if you do want to learn more, we host monthly impact labs at ImpactAssets that showcase how you can use your philanthropic dollars in investing. And I think that's really what the game changer is here. And just really appreciate the work that y'all are doing.
Well, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Laura and Ward and Anasha and Aparna and the Upstart team for keeping us on track today. And thank you to everyone who joined. There will be a recording of this call that Upstart, as well as ImpactAlpha, will share. I imagine ImpactAssets might as well. Again, feel free to reach out to Laura, Ward, or Deb for next steps or further conversations. And a shameless plug to subscribe to ImpactAlpha to follow all of our coverage of the creative economy and other impact sectors. And thanks to Upstart for co-hosting with us today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.